Welcome to the Money to Meeting podcast, where we explore ways to bridge the gap between money and our heart's desires. I'm your hostess, Amy Adler. Today's guest is residential real estate agent and owner of Harpeth Realty, Barrett Raven. Barrett has helped tons of my divorcing clients, and they always have great things to say about how responsive and friendly and helpful and tall you are. So before we get started, I'd like to just say a huge thank you personally for all that you have done and continue to do to help my clients who are all people going through divorce, which is always a really difficult time in their lives. And they are not always the easiest to work with. And so it takes a really big heart and patient person to do this work, and you do it beautifully, and I'm really appreciative of that. So thank you. And I'm really glad that you're with me today for this conversation. So welcome, Barrett.
Oh, thanks. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here, Amy.
Awesome. Well, so help my audience learn a little bit about you and your background and what you love about your real estate career.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to try to make an incredibly long story, just regular long here. So
That's
I grew
appreciated.
up,
Thank you.
yeah, so I grew up in Conroe. It's a northern suburb of Houston. And I came to Austin to go to the University of Texas, so hook 'em horns.
Me
And
too.
right on. And I graduated from college and I got into teaching. So I was a teacher for about 8 years. And at some point in those 8 years, my wife and I, we decided to have kids. We had our first son, everything went great. We had our second son. And then when he was a week old, he had major heart failure. And he was like life flighted to Dallas. And he had open heart surgery when he was 2 weeks old. And it was pretty touch and go with him, honestly, like if we were going to get to have him or not for about the first year. And so it was totally crazy. I've had plenty of therapy. I've talked it out. I've cried all the tears, I promise. Um,
I
but
haven't. I might cry for you today. Wow, that's so scary.
yeah, it was insane. So essentially, we came out of that year, his first year, kind of like zombies because we weren't sleeping at all and we were like living in hospitals basically. And we had a ton of medical debt. And it's funny because I was teaching at a private school and I was like, I have health insurance, but apparently I have no idea how this works because we have so much debt. Um, and so I just knew that something had to change in our financial lives. Like, and I often feel like when, and I'm sure you've experienced this with your clients too, it's like when something crazy and traumatic and very expensive like that happens to you, it almost makes you look at your finances under a microscope and it makes you be very critical about your finances. And so my wife and I did that. And we kind of looked at ourselves and we were like, this hasn't worked for a long time financially. Like, me working this $38,000 a year job, single income provider with kids in the middle of Austin, we were like, turns out this isn't sustainable at all. But it just took a catastrophic event like that to expose that. And so again, really long story short, I took a little while and I was like, I feel like I need to start a business. All the business owners I know from Conroe, they're doing okay, or it seems like they're doing okay. So I need to start a business. And so I did a ton of research and I decided to get into real estate. And actually, I was like 15 minutes into my first real estate licensing class, and I had this distinct feeling of, I think this is my calling. I really
Mm.
think this is what I'm supposed to do with my life, actually, because I was a middle school math teacher, and let's be real, most of real estate is middle school math.
Yeah,
Um,
it is.
I was a middle school teacher, so I think I had a lot of patience and I like to slow down with people and explain things and take them through a process. And I know everybody says this, but I really do love people. I love being around people. I love hearing their stories. I love getting to know them. And so I thought, dang, this is like a dream job. you know? And so I jumped into it. And for the first year and a half, I did both teaching and real estate. And I probably worked 80 to 100 hours a week. It was totally crazy. I can't believe I did it. And essentially in June of 2015, I decided to jump in the deep end and do real estate as my only job 2 days before our daughter was born. And so I jumped in the deep end. And so since June 2015, this has been my only job, my only career. And
Almost 10 years now as of the time of this recording.
in March, it was 10 years actually.
Mm-hmm.
So I got my license. Oh yeah, that I've been doing as my only job. I got my license in March 2014. Um, so so much has happened, and I learned how to hire people. I built a team. I started my own company. I have agents, and so it really has grown really organically from there. But the question that you actually asked me, like, what do I love about my real estate business? Like, I think there's two parts of that. I love getting to make an impact in people's lives. I love getting to help people find their home. I love helping people transition into another home, whether it's upsizing, downsizing, moving location. I absolutely love that. But I also love providing great jobs for people. I love being able to employ team members. I love creating culture. I love getting to hire, bring on agents, and show them how to build this future for themselves that I've been so fortunate to be able to build. And I know we're going to get into this later, but what I really love about this business is getting to help other people achieve their goals and achieve their dreams. And I genuinely mean that.
I love that. And I think, intuitively, that's why I felt drawn to you, because I think we are very aligned with our professional goals and what we want to do to help other people too. We both are heavily invested in helping people live their best lives. That's really what it is, in a nutshell. So I love that. Well, so let's talk a little bit about what you do for my divorcing clients, because I think we actually have a pretty good system set up now, to be able to assist my divorcing clients. So I would love for you to explain from your perspective what you do to help the spouses, either both or one, value your home, value their home and any other local properties that they might own.
Yep, absolutely. So I'm actually going to back it up just a tiny little bit. So, and I want to send that compliment right back to you. Like, I think when I met you and connected with you, seeing how much you genuinely wanted to help people without just keeping your eyes on the money scoreboard all the time, like that was something that really drew me to you. And I was like,
Mm.
Amy is someone who I want to be aligned with. So I just want to pass that right back to you. Okay.
Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you.
You got it. And so I helped a couple who were some friends actually, who were going through a divorce. This must have been back, honestly, it was around 2015, 2016, early on in my, like when I was only doing real estate as my career.
Just started that. Yeah.
Just started it. I helped some friends who were getting a divorce, and I interacted a lot with both of their attorneys. And at the time, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just trying to show up and help and be compassionate and be empathetic, um, and really tailor the experience to exactly what each spouse wanted, right? And I just thought I was taking them through a normal process. Well, then both of their attorneys approached me independently and said, Barrett, that was awesome. Like, you should do this. Like, you should work with people who are like separated, divorcing, because the way that you handled it just with calm, and also you obviously have a pretty dialed in process. Like, you should do this. And so we're going to send you more people who are divorcing who you don't even know. I was like, oh, okay. And they both did. And so this little niche that I've had going on, I feel like I genuinely just stumbled into it. And at first it was just kind of like, oh, just show up and be myself and be empathetic and ask people how they want this to go. and tailor the experience to them. I mean, isn't that what everybody does? Turns out, no, it's not.
No.
And so, and so at some point, I kind of looked up, I took a step back and I was like, what if I actually had a process just for this? And what if I actually did this on purpose? And what if I looked for other people who, whether it's divorce financial guides, divorce attorneys, family law attorneys, who they actually need a resource like me, right? And so I was like, man, I could really, this could really help me build my business just being who I am and doing what I do. So all that being said, really, I've I kind of started all of this out as like an experiment. Like, what if I actually didn't care about the business? And like, what if I was a nonprofit and my only job was to just find people that I can fill a need for and then do that thing, right? And so that was when I connected with you. And really, I don't know if you remember, but I just asked you, like, what do your clients need the most? And you were like, they need to value their marital estate. Like they need home valuations. That is what I need. And I was like, okay, well, I know exactly how to do that. And doing what's called CMAs, comparative market analysis, essentially a pricing estimate report. An analysis is just something that I'm really good at that is really easy for me. And so I thought, hey, I kind of have a unique ability in this, and you have a unique need with this. This is a good match. And you know what? If it ever turns into business someday, I don't really care. If it does, great. If not, my job is to provide value to the world. And so essentially, and another thing is I really try to stay in my lane, right? I am not the divorce financial guide. I am not the family law attorney. I am the real estate agent. I know how to price homes and market them for sale and to negotiate them, right? And so with your clients, I really stay in my lane of like, unless and until they tell me on their own, I actually need help with the real estate transaction, my only job is to provide you with a market analysis. Okay. And so, and I think honestly, a lot of your clients are really surprised by that. Whenever I first talk to them, they're like, I'm not going to sell. I'm not going to sell. And I'm like, no, I don't care. Like, I hope you don't have to sell. Like, I really just want to help you understand what the value of this property is so that Amy can guide you through the next steps. And like, if you should sell, if you should keep it, if you should refi, whatever you need to do. Um, so do you want me to go into the process of actually how I value the marital estate?
Oh, you don't have to go into that level of detail. No, no. I think you just gave a lot of helpful information to the audience for sure. Thank you for that. And one thing that you said actually is a great segue into the next question that I had for you, which is that there's actually more information that you can provide to people, some people who are going through the divorce process than just valuing their homes, which my work with people is to try to help them be realistic about what their finances are going to look like after the divorce is finalized so that they don't end up house poor.
Yep.
And a lot of that involves getting an understanding of what other options are there for them to buy or rent if they have kids, if they want to stay in the same school district, can they start getting their minds around other potential options that they could consider if not to stay in the marital home, because then they're not married to the idea of staying in their home. If they can start dreaming of a happy life that might be more affordable for them, or at least more diversified with their investments than if they had all of their equity in the house, for example, which a lot of my clients end up really pushing for and not realizing that they're sacrificing retirement and all of the other different types of investments they could and maybe should have just to stay in the house that they can't afford to pay the monthly payments on then. And so, right, like you were just explaining, you were working two jobs. Like a lot of people who go through divorce end up in a similar situation, not because they're trying to start a business on the side, but just to try to make ends meet to
Yep.
pay for this house that they agreed to keep. So have you had discussions with people before about some of the other options of places that they could live, and how do you help them come to terms with that as a possibility or as a good idea for them?
Yeah, I am so glad you're bringing this up. So first I said, yes, I stay in my lane, right? And at the same time, I also have what I like to call kind of a fleet of experts who stay in their lane. Okay. And so one of the things that I do, going back to kind of tailoring the experience to the, I don't even want to say client at this point because they're not my client, tailor the experience to the individual, right? One of the questions I ask, and this is just like so basic, is just apart from valuing your home, how can I help you? Right? And oftentimes the spouse or the couple will just tell me exactly what they want to do. And it's not my job to tell them this is what it's going to cost you to stay in the home, or this is what your payment will be after you refinance, or this is what your payment will be after you do a cash out refi and pay off the other spouse. That is a mortgage lender's job, right? And so oftentimes what I found, I don't want to say oftentimes, every single time, what I have found is when I connect people with the right resource, the the right strategy or the plan will present itself. Okay. And so again, if I, well, it actually, let me back it up even a little further. Uh, when you connect me with someone, sometimes I just talk to one spouse. Sometimes I talk to both spouses. And that dictates the plan and that dictates the strategy a little bit
Mm-hmm.
from the very beginning. And
Mm-hmm.
so sometimes I talk with people who are in a contentious divorce. Sometimes I talk to one person who's in a contentious divorce. Sometimes I talk to one person who they're in a very amicable separation divorce. And sometimes I talk to both people in the couple, and you're just like, are y'all really getting a divorce? Like,
Right.
y'all are like best friends and y'all are totally collaborative and very, very cordial here. And so you kind of have to take each scenario um, individually, right? So all that said, when I ask someone, how can I help you? Sometimes they'll tell me, all we want is the valuation of our home and she's going to stay. I'm going to go rent something else, right? Or she's gonna stay, she's gonna refi, pay me out, and then she's gonna stay and I'm gonna go buy something else. And I just ask, can I help you with any of that? Right. And sometimes they say, nope, nope, I have a realtor. I have someone who's gonna help me. I don't need your help at all. I say, cool. Well, if anything ever changes, let me know. You know how to reach me. But then asking, okay, this is just one example. If you, if your idea, if your plan is to stay in the home, you're going to do a cash out refi, pay out the other spouse. Have you guys spoken to a lender about what that looks like? Right. And oftentimes they're like, should I? Or I don't know. And it's like, well, yeah, you definitely should. And so I think you and I talk about this all the time. So it's obvious to us. But for someone who bought their house at $350,000 at a 2.9% interest rate, things are going to look a lot differently when they refi for $500,000 at 7% interest, right? And so oftentimes people don't realize, oh, it's not just a matter of taking the equity out and paying you. Like, I have a new monthly obligation here, and I don't know what that's going to be like. And so for me, I found that when I connect someone with a great lender, mortgage lender, who can actually run the numbers for them and show them what this will look like, that, and I'm not going to sit here and say I relish it or love it, but that's when I get the phone call back that's like, hey, this ain't gonna work. Turns out I do need to sell, but what do I do? I have my kids in this house. They've got the school. I don't know. Well, then it's like, okay, how can I help you? Let me let me share with you some options. Let me get your criteria. Like, what are you wanting? Like, let's find you a great home that meets your criteria. Keep the kids in the same schools. Like, things like that, where you can maintain at least most of your lifestyle. Um, and like I said, you just kind of take each experience individually and see where it goes.
Mhm.
But you're right, I can provide a lot of other resources, but the first thing I want to do is I really want to point you in the right direction, and I want you to achieve the goal that you want to achieve. So if you want to stay in the house, I want you to stay in the house. But let's make sure you understand exactly what that looks like and take it from there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely, it does. And what you're pointing to is actually a big part of my process with most of my clients. I mean, my business offers several different services to people, and in some of them, we can't do that kind of stuff if it's more of a litigation support, expert witness. But when we're doing mediations or supporting just one spouse, budgeting is like the number one thing that I'm trying to help my clients focus on, preparing a budget for what their life is going to look like post divorce. And the number one most challenging and most expensive item in that budget is their living situation. It's the mortgage payment, it's the property taxes, it's the insurance, it's the maintenance, the repairs, the all of the things that go along with homeownership, utilities. I want them to plan for that and understand what it's going to look like. So that's why I connect them with you so early on in the process, is a to work on valuing their house as part of the marital balance sheet, and b to look at their individual post-divorce income statement and figure out if staying in that house actually does make sense for them financially. And if it doesn't, just showing them what other properties in the area might be available, condos or townhomes. Like, they might still be able to stay in the same very expensive school district and have a condo or a townhome that they don't have to pay higher insurance rates for, because the structure's insured by the HOA and is much more affordable in cost, and they don't have as much maintenance cost for it either, because it's a smaller place that may just be exactly what they need to be able to get the things that are really important to them, and also be able to make their ends meet and not be dipping into their retirement accounts before their retirement age,
Yep.
or have no money at all, period, and have to sell right away because they can't afford it. So
Yeah. And look, I'll be honest with you. It has to be said, by and large, when I get people coming to me through you, they're pretty dialed in with their finances, and we don't
yeah.
usually, they already know what they can do and what they want to do, and they're really like, I just need to know what my house is worth. And that's great. But typically when I get a client or a lead or a connection from another family law attorney, it's a mess. Like, they have no idea what they can do. There's a little bit of a kind of a false sense of confidence sometimes around what the plan is, and they have no idea what's going on. So that's a little bit of a different proposition than
Yes,
people who come through you. I'll be totally honest.
for sure. Because the whole point of my business is to help people
Yeah.
prepare for these things, rather than end up coming to you, oh
Yeah,
crap, here's my divorce decree. We have to do this now and it's not going to work, but here, help me anyway.
absolutely. I just wanted to make sure that was said.
No, that's good. I'm glad you did. Thank you. That's really a good point, actually. So one of the other things that I think you can talk about with clients that would be that's really helpful is related to, once you give them the market value, you can also tell them, like, this really needs to be repaired or addressed before you are able to get this legitimate market value. Or, you know, there's some kind of major item that needs to be improved or upgraded, that's not a repair, that really should be done in order to sell it at a reasonable price. And that's a really helpful piece of information that my clients can get to in this planning process. Plus, you can give them resources of people who can actually do that work so they can get some bids while they're in this negotiation process. Like, let's make sure that we're not putting the house on the marital balance sheet at a value that you can't actually get for it without putting thousands and thousands of dollars into fixing up certain things, because that's a marital expense too that needs to be accounted for. Otherwise,
Yep.
people get screwed in the divorce or post-divorce, like what you're describing, them coming to you from the attorneys afterwards.
Yes. No, absolutely. So I am picking up what you're putting down here. So this is one of my favorite things to talk about with clients because I think there are so many preconceived notions out there and a lot of kind of misconceptions out there around what you should do to your home before you sell it. So this might be a little controversial. You're going to get some Barrett's hot takes here. Um, but another thing that I'll do with your people, really with anybody, but we're talking about your people that you're working with, your clients, is we'll have them fill out. My company is called Harpeth Realty, so we'll have one or both people in the couple fill out a document. It's a Google form called the Harpeth Homeowners Questionnaire. And that gives me a lot of basic information about their house. It helps me in the valuation. It just helps me understand what their house is like. And then what I always want to do, and I'd say I do it 8 times out of 10, is I actually visit the home and do a quick 15-minute walkthrough so I can see it, feel it, taste it, smell it, sort of stuff, so that I can actually make confident recommendations about what they should or shouldn't do to the home if they wanted to sell it, right? So one thing that I tell clients or potential clients or just individuals before I even start the walkthrough is I say, look, I want to share my personal and professional philosophy with you about listing prep. So there is almost nothing you can do to your home where you will actually get an ROI on that improvement, right? So like a return on investment. So here's an example. I'm like, let's say you have Formica countertops in your kitchen, right? Straight out of the 80s. And I'm like, I could tell you replace your countertops with Carrera marble countertops, right? And that'll probably run you $20,000 to install Carrera marble countertops. And a buyer will turn around and pay you more for your Carrera marble countertops, but they're probably going to pay you about $7,000 more than they would have if they were Formica. So it's like, do you want to spend $20,000 to make seven? No, that is a very bad investment, right? And almost everything is like that. Okay. So what I tell people is what you got is what you got. Okay. Your value of your property is in the land and the current improvement that is on it. Okay. So the best things that you can do to your home, the biggest bang for your buck is going to be keeping things clean, tidy, and simple. And fix things that are broken. Right. So yeah, if you have a leak coming, if there's water pouring through your roof, fix it. Okay. If you've got wood rot on your siding, like definitely fix it. If there's a broken window, fix it. But that's pretty common sense stuff that a lot of people would already think of. And so a lot of our clients they're very relieved to know that. Because they're like, okay, I don't have to do a ton of work to my house. I'm like, no, you definitely don't. If you want to, I will not fight you on it, but don't think that you're going to make much more than you spend, or don't think you're going to make what you spend on it. Okay. So again, if you keep things clean and tidy, simple, I'm a big fan of staging. So if the home is occupied, we have an occupied home stager that comes in and rearranges some things, makes it look great. If it's empty or vacant, I have a great vacant home stager. But apart from staging and fixing things that are broken, just clean up, tidy up. What you got is what you got. And our
I
job
love
is to make what you got. Our job is to market what you got in the best way possible and negotiate the best price for you.
that's really helpful. I think that's not the same advice that a lot of real estate agents give to clients. So it's really helpful to hear that from the expert's mouth directly. Thank
Yeah,
you for your honesty, for sharing that.
for sure.
Um, so one of the interesting things about the Texas community property laws in particular is the rule that if separate property is used to improve a community property asset, then the value to the spouse's separate estate for that improvement is the actual value of just that improvement itself today. So if, for example, wife uses inheritance money to remodel the kitchen in their house during the marriage, the law says that we have to give a value specifically to just that kitchen today by itself to be able to segregate the value of the home itself in the marital estate and her separate estate. This seems like an almost impossible thing to do, though. What are your thoughts on being able to value a kitchen by itself and being able to comply with this legal requirement?
Yeah. Okay. Now I'm gonna harken back to staying in my lane here. Like, as far as all of the implications of the separate and community property stuff, that's for you and the
That's
attorney.
my lane, right? But
Yes.
can you value a kitchen by itself?
So I would say yes and no. It is completely subjective, right? Like in theory, if you could find identical comparable properties, like maybe they were across the street from each other in the same neighborhood and they are literally identical in every single way, except one has an original kitchen from the 80s and the other has a updated kitchen, right, from 2024, and they were both sold on the same day. And one of them sold for $40,000 more, and it was the one with the better kitchen. And other than that, they're literally identical. Well, then I could say, oh, this updated kitchen is worth $40,000. But obviously, that's impossible. That never happens. And so much of this is subjective, and so much of it is just based on if you were asking me to value the kitchen, it's going to be based on my experience. And it is seriously going to be based on hundreds, if not thousands, of little data points that clients have entered into my brain, just little comments that they've made, like, oh, I'd pay $10,000 for that. Or uh, little comments that they make like that. So I really do think like I've gotten pretty good at identifying what buyers will pay for certain upgrades. And so like if I were sitting here in a court and a judge asked me like, Barrett, how much is that kitchen worth? I would look at it and I could probably give you a number. And if he said, give me the data to back up your assertion, I would say, well, you have to look inside my brain because it's purely just based on my subjective feelings and my experience. So you're right. It's incredibly hard, if not impossible, to give an objective valuation of an upgrade at all.
Yeah.
Not just the kitchen, but at all.
That's my opinion as well, that the laws are written by people who don't actually fully understand finance, real estate, like the nitty-gritty details of how it works in real life. And so the unfortunate truth is, somebody recently said to me, if you don't get a prenup, the state does it for you. That's essentially what's happening here, is that people who are getting divorced in Texas, specifically in this case, are finding out in the divorce process what their separate property and community property contributions to different things actually means for them in real life. Even if they intended it to mean something completely different, that doesn't matter in the eyes of a judge in a divorce court. So the reason I created this life transitions finance professional training program that is intended for all finance professionals, including real estate agents, is because I wanted to see more financial services professionals like you and others in the mortgage, financial planning, insurance industries, all those things, have this information and be able to share this with clients when they're making the initial investments. Improvements, you're not really, and you particularly are not involved with them when they're making the improvements, unless they're asking about wanting to make an improvement before they finalize the sale after their divorce or around a divorce. But typically
Yeah.
that's not the case. So it's more about when they're making the initial investments, and there are separate property and community property laws around that too, that people don't realize when they're making that purchase, whether they're married or living together, or even if it's just two friends who are buying a property together. There are so many community and separate property laws that come into play here that they don't realize until they sell or split up. And everybody feels like they're getting caught with egg on their face. They're very frustrated by what the law says is the case for them. So I'm wondering, from your perspective, Barrett, what do you think is the benefit or the potential here for these finance professionals and real estate agents learning more about what the laws say and having the ability to share this information with clients before they make the investment or before they get married?
Yeah, so that is so freaking interesting to me.
Mm.
Like all of this. I actually have questions for you.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, as realtors, as real estate agents, we have what's called a fiduciary duty to our clients, right? And I know you know what this is, but for the viewers, um, essentially what that means is we have an obligation, a legal obligation to operate and to act in our client's best interest, right? Not in our own best interest, not in the other party's best interest, like in our client's best interest, right? And so part of the fiduciary duty is what they refer to uh, in the real estate world as competence, right? And so competence means like I have to know how to value a property, right? I have to understand the contract. I have to know the implications. I have to know at least, even if I don't know the laws, I have to have the resources to point them to, right? And so if I have a fiduciary duty to operate in my client's best interest, well, part of what's in their best interest is, in your words, not to have future egg on their face and to be in a worse financial position because of something that I've advised them on, right? So that right there is a reason that I should know about this stuff, or at the very least, um, be able to point them and advise them to speak to somebody like you or a family law attorney, um, so that they can be protected.
That's awesome. Yeah. And if you educate yourself about some of these laws, then you don't have to point
Yeah.
them to somebody, um, which is really what my hope is, that more people will be educated about it so that they can make decisions knowingly upfront
Hmm.
rather than find out and get really upset about the results down the road. Because it's not just divorce, it's also probate, it's death too. The same issues apply, the same issues come up, and every marriage is going to end in death or divorce unless they're lucky enough to sink together on the Titanic. So so in either case, it's valuable and important for people to really understand what their decisions and where the money comes from that they're using to buy real estate in this case is, where it's coming from, and that they have a joint understanding together about what it means for them and what they intend for it to mean for their future, and who gets it back, who gets it when they die or get divorced, whichever happens.
Yep.
So that's why I created this training, was to really help real estate agents be more knowledgeable about this stuff, to be able to at least know enough to be dangerous, right? To be able to speak to, oh, by the way, this is an important thing for you to think through before you make that down payment and before you figure out where that down payment's going to come from. But not only that, but before you decide what property to buy, because if you are going to make a different decision about where the down payment comes from because you don't want to commingle community and separate property potentially, or you don't want any
Right.
risk of those issues coming up, then maybe you're actually going to buy a less expensive property as a result of that. Which, if you had the choice to do that before you actually bought it, you might have made a different decision.
Sure.
And I think that's really the key here, is helping people make more informed and smart decisions earlier in their lives, so that when they get to me down the road, if they end up getting divorced, right, or
Yeah.
in the probate process, they already know how it's going to work out and they're okay with it because they've had all those years to
Yep.
get to a place of acceptance or comfort with it.
Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
So this is probably part of your training, so don't want to just give away the farm here. But my question is, how do you tactfully approach these conversations
Mm.
with clients? Like, because obviously every couple who I meet, they assume they're going to be together forever, and it'd almost be like insulting to be like, what? You like, we're going to be together forever. How dare you? This is supposed to be a warm, fun, like experience for us. So how can you tactfully broach that topic with clients?
So that's where that statement I just made about your marriage is gonna end in death or divorce, one or the other, and this conversation is relevant regardless of which one happens. That it helps to just kind of diffuse the tension around assuming they're getting divorced, because that's not the point of the conversation. It's not
Yeah.
the only way. But and that's a great question, by the way, Barrett. And yes, that we do go into that in more depth in the training for sure. The soft skills part of it is a big piece of the training, because what you've just pointed to is a, you know, nationwide, worldwide stigma attached to any conversation about money in general being such a private thing and uncomfortable. And I think you're right that your assumption is right, that a lot of people are uncomfortable having these conversations. And we do work to teach these professionals how to be transparent and open about it, and inviting, and create a safe environment to have these conversations without judgment and from a perspective of trying to help. So, Life Transitions Finance Professional, the whole training program in general, is meant for people who really have the heart to truly help people. It's not going to be for the folks who are just looking to make a buck as soon as possible, because that's not what we're all about at all. So I really appreciate you bringing up that question. Actually, that's great and very aligned. And funny enough, that's really aligned with the next question that I had for you too, which is that one of the things I love about you so much is that you do this valuation work for my clients who are getting divorced for free. You don't charge them for it. And when I share that with them in my initial consultations, they're kind of shocked. Like, well, then are they going to just try to get, is he just going to try to get my business to sell my house or buy another? Cause I'm not going to use him. And the answer is like what you just said. No, that Barrett, you just have a big heart and you want to help. And what's interesting about that approach, and you kind of alluded to it at the beginning of our conversation today too, is that when we align ourselves with what's fulfilling and helping other people, the money, the business seems to kind of just show up. It's like we're
Yeah.
putting good things out into the world and we get things back. And it may not come from the same person we helped. It usually doesn't, but it does come back to us in other ways. And if I've learned that if I just trust in that and focus on working coming from my heart space, helping people with the goal of doing what's best for them, that I'm taken care of financially by the universe, God, whatever you want to call it. So has this been your experience as well? And can you talk a little bit about how your story around that evolved?
100,000% yes. I totally identify with that. So, and I want to be clear, like, I can't have a business unless my business makes a profit.
Right.
right? So like, let's be real. It's not like I'm sitting here head in the clouds, just oblivious to needing to make money and needing to make a profit, right? I'm very dialed into my business profit and loss and things like that. And what's interesting is I think I mentioned something about this earlier, but there was a point, I can't remember what year it was, 2017, 2018, where I honestly kind of did this as an experiment. I was like, what if I actually don't think about the money? Like, what if I actually just focus on providing value into the world, right? And look, it's easier to do this type of work with your clients because if I didn't, I would I would have a really great business still, right? Like I have a very loyal group of past clients who come back to me and they refer me, really involved with my church. And despite my best efforts, I still get a lot of business from my church, even though I actively try not to talk about real estate at church. Um, and I went to UT, really involved in my kids' school and our neighborhood and the cycling community. And I also work with probate attorneys. You brought that up earlier. And so I've got a really great kind of stable of VIPs who support my business. And like, we have a really, really great business. So like the work that we do with your clients is really interesting because I get to come from this place of I literally don't need any of them to work with me. Like I already have a really great business and I really do sometimes think of it like nonprofit work
Hmm.
where I'm just like I have the time, I have the skills, my business is taken care of over here. I don't I don't need this to work. Or not to work. I don't need this to bring me business and provide revenue to my business because I'm already taken care of, right? And so I absolutely like what's funny is I ultimately end up telling people more not to buy houses than I tell them to buy houses. Because people can get really emotionally wrapped into a house and maybe they're just tired of looking and they just want to settle on something. And I'm the one who usually steps in and I'm like, guys, don't do this. Like, you do not need to do this. And what I noticed is like, those are like my biggest raving fans. People who will be like, oh my gosh, Barrett, you would make a lot of money if we bought this house and you told me not to do it. And I always say, look, I'm not the one who made up the way that we get paid. Yes, if you buy a house, if you sell your house with me, I do make revenue on that. I did you make up that financial model? No, I didn't. This is just the way that it works. And so I'm gonna have to like pretend like there's not a financial incentive here and just show up every day like this is my job. My job is to operate in your best interest and to give you really, really good advice, whether or not I ever get paid for it or get a client out of this. And you're so right, Amy. That that honestly is when I saw my business exponentially grow. And it's so funny, like not saying any names here, but there was one of your clients who reached out to me recently and she said, okay, I'm ready to buy. And I was like, who is this? Like, who is this person? And it like I had to search back and it turns out like 2 years ago,
Yeah.
I did a market valuation for her house and I and I did it and she said thank you. You said thank you so much. And all I knew was she never contacted me again. So I was like, cool, I did my job. And then what do you know? 2 years later, she really remembered that. Um, and I can't even tell you how many times that's happened where one of your people would, sorry, my CRM is yelling at me here. Um, I can't tell you how many times that's happened where one of your clients will reach out to me and just be like, all right, man, let's do it. When are we going to be ready to put the house on the market? And I'm like, who? Oh yeah, it's an Amy Adler client. Um,
And that's common in the divorce space because they have to wait a while before
yeah,
they finalize their divorce, and then they have to live life a little while before they figure out what their next move is. So Yeah, that seems really common that you'd see them surface back up years down the road. But I
Yep.
love hearing that. I love that they remember you and reach back out to you, because I think that says a lot about the impact that you had on their lives in such a tough time. Like they really appreciated the support that you provided them.
Yep. And it's so funny how often people say when I meet them in person at their house and they give me the quick tour and I make notes of things and I can't tell you how many times people have like out in the driveway before I get in my car, they'll say like, hey, just remember, like, we're not selling. Um, but if we do, we are definitely using you. Like, you're my guy, and it's so funny. I'm like, we don't even know each other. Like, I just provided you with this resource and I provided you with my expertise. And oftentimes they do feel like a connection with me, even though that's not what I'm trying to do. Honestly, like, that's not the point. It just happens.
Yeah, well, you have a you I mean, this is going to sound cheesy, but you kind of exude love. Like you just
Oh,
have an aura about you of happiness, joy, love that I think is very infectious. And people who are going through that tough time especially appreciate that feeling, because they're not feeling much of it elsewhere. So, I think that I try to do the same for them. And again, I feel like that's why we're a good team in our work, is because we're providing very similar um, emotional support to them, even though we're finance people.
yep, totally.
So when you are helping people find a house, like if they're buying a house, how do you know? Because I bet before they do sometimes, that a client that you found the right house for the client, or that they found the right house for them. How do you know?
Oh man. Okay, so I'll give you the short answer and the longer answer. So like usually I just know. I don't know, like I don't know how to describe it, but I
Gut
think
feeling.
yes,
Mhm.
it's a gut feeling. But it's funny, I was just talking with some clients this past Monday or Tuesday, I can't remember. And we were out looking at a house in Northwest Austin, and which I know is close to your heart. We were looking at a house in Northwest Austin, and at the end of the viewing, we were sitting in the living room, and they asked me, they're like, and that's clients often do, like, what do you think, Barrett? Like, do you think we should make an offer on this house? And I was like, no. And they were like, well, why? And I was like, well, I can tell you a few things about it that I won't bore you with the details, but here are a few things about it that specifically don't meet your criteria that you told me were super important to you. But beyond that, I did not see the reaction from you guys that is a requirement for me to advise you to buy this home, right? Like, I want you to just say things like, this is amazing. Like, wow, could you imagine? Um, you didn't talk about how you love it. The only comments I heard were critical comments or ways that you could make it work, right? Like, I don't want you to make it work. Like, you are paying a lot of money for this, even if it's a $250,000 house, that's $250,000, right? They were spending a lot more than that. But I was like, I don't want you to make it work. Um, I always ask clients to rate the house 1 out of 10. 1 out of 10, and you can't say seven, okay? Because seven is like a non-answer answer. Um, and usually they will tell me if they say anything, if they say an 8 or higher, I'm like, we should probably explore this. And if they say less than a 7, I'm like, nope, it's not worth it. We're not doing this. But going back to your actual question, I can just tell it is an involuntary physiological and emotional response that people have. I don't care if you have the driest personality or you're super bubbly and animated and expressive, or you're just like a jerk and you're just mean. There is an involuntary response that you will have when you walk into a home that you can actually see yourself in. And I know what that looks like. And so if I don't get that from a client, I'm gonna tell them that this house isn't for them. And if I do see that in a client, I at least know like this is something that we should explore. And more often than not, like this is the house for you.
So I think what you're talking about is what the psychologists call like micro expressions that is
Yes.
before
Yep.
the actual fake presentation of whatever they're trying to put out there is the real micro expression that happens first
Yep.
is the reaction. So you know if it's the right place for a client based on the minute they walk into the property. Do you
Within a
ever know before they get there? Like, do you
no,
ever think, I bet this is going to be the place?
no, because photography can be so misleading that
Mhm.
like I never judge the house until I see it. I don't care what it looks like online. I'm like, nope, I'm not going to get excited about this until I see it in person. And I've seen it the opposite, where it looks like a dumpster fire in the photos and they just do terrible vertical iPhone photos. And you show up and you're like, this house was so under marketed, you know? And so no, I withhold judgment. I never know until we see it.
But what I think you are describing that you do is basically you're an empath. Like you can feel what your clients are feeling when they walk into a property because nobody really can actually see a micro expression
Yeah.
before, right? I mean, they happen too fast. So from the psychological theory. So what you're getting is an intuitive hit from like an empathy, which is as a business professional to think about that as our source of guidance is kind of scary to think about, right? I mean, like we like data, we like evidence, we like to see and know how things work and know what's right and what's not right from the numbers or from the paper. And it's really hard to use those things to figure it out if it's the right fit for a client, which I would say a lot of real estate agents have the same problem, right? So it's
For sure.
great that you're able to rely on your intuition and empathy to be able to determine that for people. I think that that's really beautiful and would love to see more finance professionals relying on that gut instinct and emotional feelings impact.
Me
So,
too. I would love to see that in more financial professionals.
yeah. So I know we have to wrap up here and just want to ask a couple more quick questions for you, if you don't mind. What does the podcast title "Money to Meaning" mean to you? How do you interpret that?
I mean, like personally, when I hear that, it's totally going along with the theme of exactly what we've been talking about today. To me, I think of it as going from money to meaning, right? And so going from a place where it's all about money and what can I do to bring revenue? What can I do to drive revenue? Instead, thinking, what can I do to provide meaning and impact in these people's lives?
I love that. Yes, that's definitely one of the interpretations I had in mind when I came up with it. So, how can people find you and your team if they're looking for real estate services in the Austin area?
Yeah, I would say there's three primary places. So first, you can check out our website. It's harpethrealtytx.com. That's HARPETH. So harpethrealtytx.com. The second place would be YouTube. So if you just look me up on YouTube, Barrett Raven, it's probably where you're watching this anyway. So if you just search my name, I've been doing YouTube for 10 years. Um, and so we have a huge catalog of videos. I'm kind of like your Austin, Texas safari guide. That's what I like to think of myself as.
It
So
is a
check us
jungle
out.
here.
Oh yeah, it's a jungle out here, guys. And so we do everything from like home tours, neighborhood tours to like what are the best tacos and us trying tacos all over Austin. Like there's all sorts of fun stuff there. And then the third way is probably my Instagram. So if you just look me up on Instagram, Barrett Raven, my handle is B Von Raven. And I'm always putting stuff out there about my family and about business and home buying and selling tips and things like that. So Probably our website, YouTube, and Instagram are the best ways to connect.
Awesome. Barrett, thank you so, so much for joining me today. I found this conversation to be incredibly enlightening and I think will be really helpful to a lot of people. So really appreciate your time and all that you do for me and my clients.
You got it. It's been a huge blessing to me to chat with you today, and I hope it's the same for your viewers.
Thank you so much. Have a good one. Take good
All right.
care.